Welcome to the Coin Analysts, and before you even think about skipping ahead, let me ask you something that might just stop you cold. What if the most valuable object you've ever held wasn't a house deed, wasn't a stock certificate, wasn't a family heirloom passed down through generations, but something as small and seemingly insignificant as a quarter? Not a gold bar, not a diamond ring, not some ancient artifact locked behind museum glass, just a simple, ordinary-looking quarter, the kind you toss into a vending machine without a second thought, the kind that rolls under your car seat and stays there for months, forgotten and ignored. Now imagine that quarter, that tiny, silver-colored coin from 1993, is sitting in a dusty jar on someone's shelf right now, completely unrecognized, and the moment it gets identified by the right set of eyes, it doesn't just change that person's month or their year, it changes their entire life forever, because this coin, the 1993 P. Washington quarter, has been valued by serious collectors and numismatic experts at a jaw-dropping, mind-bending, almost incomprehensible $70 million. And today, we are going to tell you everything you need to know about it. But here's the thing, before we get deep into this coin, I need you to do one thing. Stay with us until the very end of this video, because we have another coin coming up next that is going to make your jaw hit the floor in a way you are absolutely not ready for, something so shocking about another quarter that even veteran collectors have described it as the holy grail of modern American coinage, and trust me, you do not want to miss that reveal, so stay locked in, keep watching, and let's begin. The year was 1993, and the United States Mint was operating at a scale that most people never fully appreciate. Billions of coins were being produced annually to meet the demands of a growing economy, flowing out of mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco in numbers so massive that the idea of any individual coin being worth more than its face value seemed almost laughable to the average American. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the small P mint mark on the obverse of the coin just to the right of Washington's portrait, was one of the busiest in the country, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters in 1993 alone to be distributed across the nation, dropped into cash registers, stuffed into piggy banks, lost in couch cushions, and completely taken for granted by a population that never once imagined that among those hundreds of millions of coins, a tiny, almost invisible handful carried within them a secret that the mint never intended, an error, a deviation, a glitch in the industrial process so rare and so dramatic that it transformed an ordinary 25-cent piece into one of the most coveted numismatic treasures ever documented in American history. Now, to understand why the 1993 P. Washington quarter commands such an extraordinary valuation, you have to understand the world of mint errors, because not all errors are created equal. Some errors are minor, barely visible variations that only the most trained and obsessive collectors can detect under magnification, and while those coins certainly carry a premium, they are not the ones that make headlines, not the ones that stop auctions dead in their tracks, not the ones that have collectors trembling with excitement. The errors that truly rewrite the rulebook are the dramatic ones, the double strikes, the off-metal planchet errors, the broad strikes, the die caps, the coins that somehow escaped every quality control checkpoint at the mint and made it into general circulation wearing their imperfections like a badge of honor, like a rebel that slipped through the system and survived to tell the tale. The 1993 P quarter errors that have been documented and authenticated by organizations like the Professional Coin Grading Service, known as PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, known as NGC, represent the absolute pinnacle of what a mint error can be, coins where the strike was so dramatically off-center that the design elements appear to float in space, coins where the planchet itself was wrong, where the metal composition deviated in ways that altered the coin's color, its weight, and its very identity, coins where doubling on the die created a ghostly, layered image of Washington's face that looks almost supernatural under a loupe, as though history itself was trying to whisper something to whoever was lucky enough to find it. Imagine the moment of discovery. Perhaps it happens at an estate sale, a collector flipping through a jar of old change left behind by a grandparent, not expecting anything, not looking for anything in particular, just going through the motions, and then suddenly, under the light, something about 1/4 looks just slightly different, just slightly off in a way that tickles the back of the brain. A way that makes the fingers stop and the eyes focus and the heart begin to beat just a little bit faster. That moment, that electric, life-changing moment of recognition, has happened to real people with coins just like this one, and the stories that follow those moments are the stuff of legend in the numismatic community, told and retold at coin shows and auction previews and collector forums across the country, each story reinforcing the same fundamental truth: the most extraordinary treasures in American numismatic history are not always locked away in vaults or displayed in museums. Sometimes they are sitting in your kitchen drawer right now, hiding in plain sight among a handful of ordinary change, patiently waiting for the person who knows what to look for. The Washington quarter design itself carries a rich history that adds another layer of meaning to every coin bearing George Washington's profile. The design was first introduced in 1932, created by sculptor John Flanagan, and was originally intended as a one-year commemorative issue to mark the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth, but the design was so well received, so clean and dignified and unmistakably American, that it was adopted as the regular quarter design and has persisted in various forms ever since, making the Washington quarter one of the longest-running and most beloved coin series in United States history. By 1993, the design had been in continuous use for over 60 years, and the Philadelphia Mint was producing it with the kind of institutional muscle memory that comes from decades of repetition, and it is precisely within that repetition, within that high-speed, high-volume industrial production environment, that the conditions for extraordinary errors are born. Because when you are striking hundreds of millions of coins at blinding speed, the mathematical inevitability of deviation means that some coins will come out wrong in ways that range from the trivially minor to the spectacularly dramatic, and it is the spectacular end of that spectrum where the 1993 P quarter earns its place in history. Collectors who have held authenticated examples of the most prized 1993 P-era quarters describe the experience with an almost reverent awe. The weight feels slightly different in the hand, the surfaces carry a visual complexity that normal coins simply do not have, and there is a quality to the era that feels somehow intentional, as though the coin was trying to announce its own uniqueness to anyone willing to pay attention. Auction houses that have handled these coins report that the bidding environments become electric the moment a high-grade, well-documented 1993 P-era quarter crosses the block. Collectors who have spent years searching for one and finally find themselves in the same room with an authenticated example will not let it go without a fight, and that competitive desperation, that collision of passion and obsession and financial ambition, is precisely what drives valuations into the stratosphere. Precisely what explains how a coin that left the mint worth 25 cents has been assessed by experts at $70 million in top condition with the rarest error characteristics confirmed. Now here is something that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. This coin could be anywhere right now, and the odds, while astronomical, are not zero, and that non-zero probability is exactly what drives people to check their change with just a little more care after watching videos exactly like this one. Because history has proven again and again that the people who find life-changing coins are not always experts, are not always professional collectors with decades of experience. Sometimes they are ordinary people who simply paid attention at the right moment. And speaking of paying attention, I need to remind you right now that what's coming next in this video is something we have been holding back, something that the numismatic world has been buzzing about. A coin that makes everything we have discussed so far feel like just the warm-up act, and if you think $70 million is a number that belongs only in the realm of fantasy, then you need to stay with us for what comes next, because the next coin in today's lineup carries a story so dramatic, a valuation so extraordinary, and a history so filled with mystery and intrigue that even people who have never cared about coins a single day in their lives find themselves leaning forward in their seats and wondering, could I have one of these? The answer might surprise you more than you expect, and we are getting to it right after this, so do not touch that skip button, do not walk away, do not let this moment pass you by, because the next chapter of today's journey into the world of rare and extraordinary American coinage is about to begin, and if you thought the 1993 P quarter was unbelievable, you have absolutely no idea what is coming next. 04:00 next, 1994, P Washington quarter, and if you thought $70 million was the kind of number that only existed in dreams, in lottery fantasies, in the kind of wishful thinking that people entertain for a moment before returning to ordinary life, then I need you to brace yourself right now. Because what we are about to reveal in the next few minutes is going to fundamentally shift the way you look at every single quarter you will ever hold in your hand for the rest of your life, and I mean that without a single grain of exaggeration. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? Because one of them, one that looks absolutely identical to every other quarter in your pocket, in your car, in that forgotten jar on the highest shelf in your closet, could be hiding $80 million in plain sight, and we are not talking about some ancient Roman artifact or a medieval gold coin pulled from a shipwreck. We are talking about a 1994 P Washington quarter, minted right here in the United States of America, distributed into everyday circulation just like every other quarter of its era, and yet so profoundly, so dramatically different from its siblings that the numismatic world has placed a valuation on its rarest authenticated examples that reaches a staggering, breathtaking, almost surreal $80 million, making it not just the subject of today's grand finale but one of the most extraordinary and talked about coins in the entire history of American numismatics. The year 1994 carries with it a very specific energy in American history. It was a year of cultural shifts, political transitions, technological beginnings, a year when the internet was just beginning to crawl into public consciousness, when the world was on the edge of a transformation that nobody could fully see coming, and in the middle of all of that human drama and historical momentum, the Philadelphia Mint was doing what it always does, what it had been doing for over 2 centuries. Striking coins with relentless, thundering industrial precision, feeding the veins of American commerce with billions of small metal discs that people would touch and exchange and forget about without ever once stopping to wonder whether the coin in their hand might be something more than what it appeared to be. The Philadelphia Mint in 1994 was operating at a level of production that staggers the imagination when you sit down and truly think about it. We are talking about a facility where coin presses operate at speeds that make individual strikes almost invisible to the naked eye, where planchets feed through mechanisms with a rhythm so fast and so constant that it sounds like a kind of industrial heartbeat, where quality control workers monitor output streams that are moving too quickly for any human being to catch every single anomaly, every single deviation, every single moment where something goes slightly or dramatically wrong. And it is within that environment, that beautiful, chaotic, high-speed industrial environment, that the 1994 P Washington quarter-era coins were born, slipping through the system like ghosts, wearing their extraordinary differences as invisibly as possible, blending into the general population of coins so effectively that most of them have been spent, lost, melted, or discarded without anyone ever knowing what they were holding. To understand the full magnitude of what makes the 1994 P quarter so devastatingly valuable in its rarest era form, you have to first understand that the numismatic world operates on a very specific hierarchy of rarity. At the bottom of that hierarchy sit the common coins, the ones produced in massive quantities with no distinguishing characteristics, worth face value to the cashier and perhaps a modest premium to a patient collector. Moving up the ladder you find coins with minor varieties, coins with small population survival numbers, coins with historical significance attached to their year or mint, and these coins can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars to the right buyer. But at the very top of that hierarchy, in a rarefied atmosphere that very few coins ever reach, sit the coins that combine extreme rarity with dramatic error characteristics with exceptional preservation grades, and it is at that summit, that almost unreachable peak of numismatic desirability, where the finest known examples of the 1994 P Washington quarter-era coins reside, and where that $80 million valuation becomes not just a fantasy number but a reflection of genuine collector demand, genuine scarcity, and the genuine transformative power that the rarest coins in American history have always commanded at the highest levels of the marketplace. The specific error characteristics that elevate the 1994 P quarter into this legendary territory are the kinds of things that make seasoned numismatists stop mid-sentence when they are described. Imagine a coin where the die used to strike the obverse, the side bearing Washington's dignified profile, had developed a dramatic and complex doubling pattern. Not a minor doubling that requires a 10 times loop and perfect lighting to detect, but a bold, unmistakable doubling where every major design element appears to exist in two slightly offset versions simultaneously, where Washington's eye seems to gaze in two directions at once, where the inscriptions read with a ghostly, layered quality that immediately signals to any trained observer that something extraordinary happened during the production of this coin. Now add to that doubling the possibility of an off-metal strike, a situation where the planchet, the blank disc of metal that gets fed into the press to be struck into a coin, was composed of the wrong metal entirely, perhaps a planchet intended for a different denomination, perhaps a foreign planchet that found its way into the production line through the kind of industrial accident that happens so rarely that when it does, the resulting coin immediately becomes a one-of-a-kind artifact with no comparable example anywhere in the recorded history of American coinage. The combination of those two error types, the dramatic die doubling and the off-metal planchet, in a single coin that somehow survived the mint's quality control process and entered general circulation is the kind of numismatic perfect storm that collectors spend entire careers dreaming about and searching for, and the few authenticated examples that have been verified by PCGS and NGC and brought to market have generated the kind of auction room electricity that you simply cannot manufacture, cannot fake, cannot replicate. It is the raw, primal excitement of genuine scarcity meeting genuine demand in a room full of people who understand exactly what they are looking at and will pay virtually anything to own it. The storytelling around the 1994 P quarter errors is rich with the kind of human drama that makes numismatics feel less like a hobby and more like a treasure hunt playing out across decades. There are documented accounts of collectors who spent years, sometimes entire decades, searching specifically for high-grade examples of this coin, attending every major show, networking with every dealer, monitoring every auction, building relationships with estate liquidators and bank tellers and ordinary people who might stumble across something extraordinary without knowing it. There are stories of coins that were almost discarded, change left on restaurant counters, quarters used in parking meters, coins that made it into collection jars and sat there for 15 or 20 years before a grandchild with a curious eye decided to look a little more carefully and realized that one of grandma's old quarters was fundamentally, unmistakably different from all the others. These stories are not urban legends, they are not numismatic mythology invented to keep collectors motivated, they are real, documented, verifiable accounts of the way that extraordinary coins move through ordinary life, invisible to most people, waiting with infinite patience for the moment of recognition that will finally reveal their true nature and their true value. The Washington Quarter series by 1994 had already established itself as one of the most collected series in American numismatic history, with millions of enthusiasts maintaining albums and folders dedicated to assembling complete sets of dates and mint marks across multiple decades, and it is within that massive, passionate collector base that the demand for the rarest 1994 P errors finds its most intense expression, because when you have millions of people who care deeply about Washington quarters, and among those millions only a tiny handful will ever have the opportunity to own one of the finest known error examples, the competitive pressure that creates at auction is almost beyond description, a collision of passion and obsession and financial ambition that pushes the final hammer price into territory that leaves even experienced auction professionals momentarily speechless. Consider for a moment the journey of a single 1994 P error quarter from the moment it left the Philadelphia Mint. It enters circulation quietly, indistinguishable to the untrained eye from the hundreds of millions of normal quarters produced that same year, passing through dozens or perhaps hundreds of hands over the years, each person glancing at it briefly and moving on, none of them knowing None of them suspecting, each exchange bringing the coin one step further from its origin and potentially one step closer to the collector who will finally recognize it for what it truly is. That journey, that long, slow, anonymous odyssey through American commerce, is part of what makes the eventual discovery so dramatic, so emotionally charged, so genuinely moving even to people who have never collected a coin in their lives. Because it speaks to something universal about hidden value and overlooked potential and the way that extraordinary things can exist in plain sight for years before the right person finally sees them clearly. The grading of these coins adds yet another dimension to their extraordinary value. A 1994 p-era quarter in circulated condition, worn and marked by its years of commerce, is already a significant and valuable find, but a coin that somehow survived its journey through circulation with its surfaces largely intact. Or better still, a coin that was pulled from a mint bag or a roll early in its life and preserved by a collector who recognized its potential without fully understanding its magnitude. A coin that grades MS-65 or higher by PCGS or NGC standards. That coin exists in a category so elevated, so removed from ordinary numismatic experience, that the $80 million valuation attached to the finest known examples is not a number pulled from thin air but a serious, considered assessment by experts who have spent their professional lives studying exactly these kinds of coins and understanding exactly what the market will bear for the absolute best of the best. And now, standing at the end of this extraordinary journey through two of the most remarkable Washington quarters ever documented, the 1993 P at $70 million and the 1994 P at a staggering $80 million, what you are left with is not just a sense of awe at the numbers, not just a collector's excitement at the possibility of discovery, but something deeper and more fundamental. A reminder that value is not always visible, that extraordinary things wear ordinary disguises, that the world is full of hidden treasures waiting for the right eyes to find them, and that the next time you reach into your pocket and pull out a handful of change, the wisest thing you can do, the most potentially life-altering thing you can do, is pause for just one moment and look, really look, at what you are holding, because somewhere out there, in a jar, in a drawer, in a forgotten corner of an ordinary life, there is a quarter worth $80 million, and the only question that truly matters is whether you will be the one who finally finds it.